I looked up to the teachers I did in high school is because they were passionate about what they did, right? And they ignited a fire in me to get me passionate about learning. And I think it doesn't matter what you teach, whether it's music or science or math or whatever. If you can communicate that passion to your students, and if you can get them excited to learn more about what it is that you're teaching them, and that leads them to a place where, you know, they get excited about school, the idea of school, and going to school and learning new things and being a better person and being a contributing member of society and so on. That's great, you know, and I think for my money, that's the reason I get into this. Because if it weren't for me, it's music, right? And I think for you it is too. But if it weren't for this, right? If it weren't for like what I was doing in high school with my music teacher, then I'm not entirely sure that I would have made it, you know what I mean? Because there was nothing else that really did it for me. School was fine, but it didn't really do it for me. So yeah, for me it's about passion, and it's about igniting passion in other people. But the interesting thing about teaching is there's no rookie jobs and there's no experienced jobs. It's the job, right? So you're thrown into the same type of classroom with the same type of students as somebody who's been doing it for 25 years. So a lot of what you're being thrust into is pretty new. And for me, the first year, I hate to say it was about survival because I really enjoyed my first year. But in some ways it is, you know, like you're learning a lot at a very rapid rate. And it was actually one of the best years I ever had teaching was my first year, because I was really open with the kids about the fact that this was my first year, but I was so excited to be there, and I was legitimately, I had my own music program my first year out teaching up in Clinton. And we learned together, you know. I made a ton of mistakes, they made a ton of mistakes, but we got through it together. And rural communities are really interesting because they're so spread out. You know, there's weather and there's issues, and people have to share rides. There's other things that are like really positive about being in a rural community. I always get the comment, it's funny, after concerts, you know, we break and the parents are stacking chairs and they're putting them under the stage for us. And inevitably I've got people here from city schools going like, oh my God, like never in a million years would we get this kind of community support for our concert. First of all, we wouldn't get nearly as many people out to see the show. And then once the show is done, I mean, they're up and they're gone. They're not stacking chairs and putting them away. There's a community feel here because it's so small and so close knit that we sort of have to depend on each other to get through things. And we all sort of have to chip in, and I think there's that spirit of community here, which I think is really, really great. My music program wouldn't exist without our community. It's that simple. Funding-wise, support-wise, anything. I mean, we run a concert, we run a press release. It runs in the local paper on page 2. You know, like if we lived in London or if we lived in Toronto, I highly doubt, right, that you'd get that kind of coverage in the press. I try to never take that for granted, because that's something that makes this place really, really special. Being, you know, the teacher there's moments for that where you should be, and you know what I mean? But you can get to really great educational places if you can share parts of yourself with your students, and then that will in turn allow them to share parts of themselves with you. And the more you know about each other that way, the deeper the musical meaning becomes, I find, because you're sharing an experience together and you know a little bit more about each other. And the stuff that I chose to share with them was the stuff that I was the most passionate about. You know, the way I make music outside of school, and the way you know, I interact with my friends, and you know, bringing my best friends up to be with them and have them play along with it. It was really neat.
What is your advice to someone like myself trying to form a career in music education? I'm keeping that laughing in there. I hope you know that. Get a job?
Run. No. No, it's oh my God, it's the best job ever. Like, I love this job. It's not an easy job. Just the time commitment that this job requires from you, it's more than most people would be comfortable with. But I think the number one thing that I always have to remind myself when it comes down to it is you can't forget why you're doing the job that you're doing. And if you ever lose sight of why you're doing it, then that's probably a time where you need to either remind yourself or stop doing it. Because I think you're doing the students, the community, the school, etc., a disservice if you lose your passion for what you're teaching. So I have to constantly, and I think you'll probably run into this at some point in your career too, maybe sooner rather than later. Like this happened to me in university too, where music starts to become work and not a joy. And as soon as that happened to me, I had to find a reason to love it again, because to me music was too important to hate. So for me, I had to get into a space where I wanted to make music again, where I had the motivation to make music again, and get excited about making music again. So I still did my program, and I put as much into that as I could. But I formed a rock band because that's what I needed. So we played on Tuesday nights at this place in London called the Rosenground, and we played covers, and it was not about the money, and it wasn't about being famous, and it wasn't about any of that. It was just about remembering why we love music. So I needed that. And then when you start teaching, and again you'll run into this, it's a different thing. I mean, I haven't played in a while, and that's okay with me because I get enough music over the course of a day, and to me the excitement that drives me in this job comes from making music with other people. And I think that's what it's always been about. I always enjoyed ensemble at university for that reason. Just the idea of making music with other people was great. The idea of me playing by myself in a practice room, not so much for me, right? I think for other people that's great, but for me it was all about making music with other people. So I took every opportunity I could to do that, and I still do. But this is a whole new level of that, and man, I'm so like creatively satisfied every day at the end of a day, because all you're doing all day is creating music with other people, and that for me that's the thing. So I guess my piece of advice, to get back to your original question, is to just continue to remind yourself why you love music. Find ways to do that, and you'll never lose your passion for the job. And then if you can keep your passion for the job, you'll always be a great